Welcome to part 2 of reading out The End of Genocide Bad by Sim Kern, which is on collective liberation. They say here, I've been seriously applying myself to this work of writing utopia for 5 or 6 years now, so I am still quite new to the practice. But in that short time, I've been able to expand my understanding of liberation so vastly that I sometimes struggle to communicate what I mean to progressive liberals who see the world much as I did before I ever read The Dispossessed. When I say free Palestine, these people want to know, what kind of nation-state do you have in mind for after Israeli apartheid is toppled? But I don't dream of nation-states, because I'm an anarchist. That goes for me too. Yes, absolutely. When folks hear anarchy, they think chaos, every person for themselves. But that is not what anarchism is. Anarchism calls for the abolition of hierarchies, of haves and have-nots, when it comes to the power of self-determination. Anarchism stands opposed to violent coercion, whether that's the coercion of threats of violence and arrest, or the coercion of contrived hunger and homelessness compelling you to labor and conform. V and I have definitely spent our time houseless, and yeah. Anarchism demands not isolation and individualism, but a far more cooperative, interconnected, and complex society. If a voice in your head is shouting, impossible, humans can't create that kind of world, we suck too much, please consider you've been socially conditioned to dismiss, or not even be aware of, the existence of anarchist ideas, thanks to a tightly controlled right-wing media landscape. Consider that the CIA infiltrated creative writing programs and literary magazines across the entire globe in the 1950s to ensure the suppression of leftist literature that might help you envision such a world, and to stop the publication of books like those titles I've listed above. And so, just this once, tell the little Joseph McCarthy in your head to hush him up, and allow yourself to dream with me. Dream of Israel's apartheid wall and the wall of the U.S.-Mexico border torn down. Dream of a world where humans and animals have freedom to migrate across the imaginary lines colonial racists drew on a map to divide us. Dream of a world where citizenship is irrelevant because wherever you live, there you are, and you are deserving of equal rights. Dream of a world where no bank, landlord, or colonizer can steal your home or hoard more land or resources than they need. Dream of a world where no one sleeps on the streets in cities where thousands of luxury condos stand empty. Like this one, Seattle. Just saying. Dream of an end to forever wars. Now, one moment there. We did vote for social housing. It's coming. So, celebrate the small wins everywhere we can, anytime we can. Dream of an end to forever wars and fossil fuel consumption. Dream of oil rigs, fracking wells, petrochemical refineries, and weapons factories disassembled, their parts repurposed for sustainable energy generation. Dream of cars and guns and warheads melted down to build rails for solar-powered trains. Dream of construction equipment used to dig up hundreds of millions of miles of asphalt roads and parking lots, all made irrelevant by purposeful public transit infrastructure. Dream of the settler freeways in the West Bank and the U.S. interstate highway system rewilded with native plants to heal the scars in the land. Dream of crocodiles returning to the Jordan River and of buffalo returning to roam the Great Plains, from the Arctic to the Gulf of Mexico. Let's not dream, though, of ecological restoration accomplished through genocidal fantasies of killing off most of the human population. Let's not give in to eugenicist, survival of the fittest fantasies, where humans have reverted to Stone Age technologies, sustaining life for just a few able-bodied hunter-gatherers to enjoy. Dream instead of a world where people gather together in sustainably re-engineered cities, or tend to the land in rural areas according to their want. Dream of communities designed around accessibility for children, disabled, and elderly people, rather than cars. Dream of the death of suburbia, of transforming the sprawl of parking lots and monoculture lawns into permaculture food forests and wildlife corridors. Dream of a world where you don't feel so compelled to travel to remote, pristine landscapes because the landscape where you live has been restored to its natural beauty. Dream of a world where the air you breathe is clean and the river in your town is safe enough to drink from. Dream of an end to the artificial scarcity of hunger. A world where we quit wasting 1.3 billion tons of food every year to rot methane into our atmosphere, and instead we just feed everyone. Dream of eating food grown locally and sustainably, in season, rather than loaded with preservatives and shipped halfway around the world. Dream of an end to fast fashion, polyester, and plastic packaging. Dream of sacrificing conveniences and consumerism in exchange for a guarantee that all your needs will be met and that you will leave a habitable earth to future generations. I do not dream of representative democracy. I do not dream of voting for some elite candidate chosen by elite interests who will somehow magically grow a conscience and enact these changes. Even I can't imagine a world where that would happen. Instead, I dream of the abolition of political elites. I dream of direct democracy, a system where you can vote on any and every issue that impacts you locally or globally. Such a system might be possible if we use the incredible power of the internet not to enrich a tiny group of Silicon Valley elites, but to facilitate such a democracy. Imagine if social media was designed not to manufacture consumerist want and spread misinformation and hate, but to facilitate the kind of education and debate necessary for healthy, direct democracy. In this world, the hoarding of wealth and power would be despised as much as we despise poverty today. Such hoarding would be impossible, not because we would punish those who attempt to seize power with violence, but because wealth and power are imaginary constructs. People must believe in wealth and power in order for them to exist. And in this world, we would inoculate the masses through liberatory education against believing in the wealth and power of anyone who would hoard them for individualistic gain. Dream of a world where you are judged by the education you have amassed or the services you render your community, not the wealth you've hoarded. Dream of labor, chosen and engaged in freely according to one's interests and in service of one's fellow people. Dream of doctors, free to treat whoever is hurt or ill, without the intervention of violent for-profit bureaucracies. Dream of chefs, free to cook for their communities without the violent coercion of the profit motive. Dream of teachers, free to teach in schools that are modeled not on prisons or factories, but as spaces to maximize creativity and inquiry. Dream of scientists studying topics to enrich our collective knowledge, and of engineers inventing technologies to improve our lives sustainably, free from the necessity to generate corporate profit. Dream of the labors it will take to heal the damage we've done to our climate and ecosystems over many generations. Long tasks of excavating landfills, repurposing their contents, of weeding invasive species, pulling plastic from the ocean, harvesting sustainable crops, and tending to nuclear waste. Dream of a world where billions of humans all work toward healing the earth and taking care of each other, rather than enriching the already rich at the expense of everyone else. Dream of clearing the rubble of Gaza, rebuilding homes, and planting olive trees. Samud. Dream of a world where you choose to work because it feels good to help your community, a community that extends to encompass the entire living world. Dream of a world where you set your own hours and no one forces you to labor in order to survive. Dream of a world where peace is maintained and boundaries respected, not through the threat of violent retribution, but from a shared recognition of our interdependence. That's the kind of freedom I imagine when I say Free Palestine. When I say Free Palestine, I am also saying free the United States and free the world because I recognize Palestine as a uniquely important crew of global empire. The United States has demonstrated over the past year that it will double down again and again in support of its colony of Israel because the loss of that colony is an existential threat to the West's global domination. If we can free Palestine from empire, and I mean all empire, not just swapping out one imperial power for another, then we can free anyone, anywhere. Then we can free the whole ding-dang world. Call me an idealist, naive, insane for dreaming such a dream. I don't care. I won't let fascists constrain my imagination to their right-wing, planet-eating, death cult-approved dystopias. I will not restrict my demands for equality to the incremental window dressings of neoliberalism. And although I adore and respect many communists, I also won't restrict my liberatory imagination to the self-defeating pragmatism of Marxism, which asks me to bend the knee for someone who they promise will be a kinder, more equitable ruler, and who they promise will someday give my freedom back to me. I believe the first step to freeing Palestine, and thus the world, is freeing your own mind from individualism, supremacy, and violence. If you can do that, you can start freeing your interpersonal relationships from coercion. If you can do that, you can free your family, your friends, comrades, and your community. And if enough of us undertake this work, eventually all these liberated communities will start to connect. Borders will blur, we will reach a tipping point, and we will free the whole world. I truly do believe humans are capable of cooperation. In fact, I believe we're hardwired for it, whereas capitalism requires constant propaganda and violent coercion to enforce. Still, I don't know if we can accomplish liberation before our society crashes into planetary limits that will result in an uninhabitable Earth. The U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza foreshadows a looming genocide of far greater magnitude, the death of billions of people through famine, drought, heat-related deaths, and disaster fueled by climate change. Or maybe Israel will launch its nuclear arsenal at Russia or Iran, and we'll all be wiped out even sooner. The same elites profiting off Israel's war in Gaza, petrochemical and weapons manufacturing shareholders, and their paid foot soldiers in imperial governments are equally responsible for the coming collapse of all life on Earth. Across the globe, elites protect themselves with armies of ever more militarized police and ever more sophisticated surveillance technology. They wield enormous influence over academic institutions, journalism, and the entertainment industry to prevent liberatory education from reaching the masses, to keep most people believing in their wealth and power. As the imaginary wealth of billionaires balloons, the gap between the ultra-wealthy and the rest of us stretches to incomprehensibly vast chasms. It can feel like the power of elites is more unassailable than at any time in human history. Except, despite all their power, they're losing control of the narrative. And here's why the past year brings me hope. Despite all the horrors we've witnessed, despite having come face to face, at least through my phone screen, with the unfathomable violence and destruction and rot at the heart of our civilization, despite all the grief and rage and despair I've felt watching this genocide unfold, watching a global protest movement of millions has, as of yet, proven incapable of stopping it. Despite all that, I cling to the hope I see in the movement for a free Palestine. Because in the past year, more people across the globe than ever before have expressed empathy and solidarity with Palestinians than in any moment in the past 76 years. Because liberatory education is spreading on social media faster than corporate censorship can stop it. A development so threatening to elites that the U.S. government is seeking to ban TikTok. And we're far from that now, but we all know what happened there. I have hope because people all across the U.S. are making connections between genocides in Palestine, Congo, and Sudan, and the climate change ravaging their communities in the form of Hurricanes Beryl and Helene and Milton, and the abandonment of their government, the crumbling of infrastructure, the tyranny of the police state. I have hope because never have the lies, hypocrisy, and fascism of all the liberal democracies of the world been so blatantly exposed. And I have hope because millions of voices have spent a year sharing truth, exposing BS, and challenging the power of an empire. Many millions are now standing in truth, but not most. And we need most. We need an overwhelming majority of people to overturn global empire. Here in the imperial core of the West, 99% of polled voters are about to cast their vote for either of two openly fascist, genocide-supporting, cop-loving, fossil-fuel bootlicking duopoly candidates. A mere 1% nationally are considering a third-party, anti-genocide pick. For the vast majority of my fellow USians, their political imaginations remain trapped in red or blue cages. People on both sides congratulate themselves on being champions of freedom for submitting their ballots with which they co-sign their oppression and the mass murder of Palestinians and the impending doom of life on earth. And so liberatory education is spreading, but can we spread it fast enough to save us? To save Palestine? Many people get overwhelmed by the seeming impossibility of the task and give up. As for me, my lifetime of activism has taught me that you just gotta keep on keeping on. Divorced from an expectation that in your lifespan, or even the lifespan of humanity, that you will win. You keep on keeping on because your cause is righteous, and because you are standing in truth. Because the pain of confronting oppression is less severe than the pain of selling your soul or lying to yourself. Because the comrades you make will become the best friends you've ever had. Keep working towards collective liberation, because what else are you doing with your brief, miraculous life? Do it for your kids, for everyone else's kids, and for all the cute little baby animals, and even the creepy crawly bugs and those deep-sea fishes with the headlamps and giant pointy teeth. Keep fighting because you love the funny little creatures that have evolved on this miraculous green and blue planet. Creatures that eat and shit and fuck and live, and you want them to go on living their funny little lives. Do it because you love people, most of all with their giggles and jokes and poetry and music and dancing and languages and cake. Do it because genocide bad. Keep on fighting for liberation because even though it seems highly unlikely we will live to see a truly free Palestine or a deeply free world, we can, at the very least, free our own minds. At the very least, when alone with ourselves, we can take a break from all the bloodthirsty violence and selfishness and suffering of the physical world. There's one corner of Earth cops will never be able to police, and that's the space between your ears. Try it. Try imagining your way out of empire and capitalism, and watch how the relationships in your life heal and deepen and become more peaceful and joyful. Discover what an enormous relief it is to allow yourself to envision a better world and to speak that vision aloud. That's what I'm doing when I say free Palestine. Your vision might just be catching. You might just free your neighbor or even a Zionist relative whose mind was trapped in a web of lies and racial supremacy. It's difficult, but if we keep repeating truth and logic and basic moral teachings over and over and over, we can actually free each other. It is slow going, but countless people who've reached out to me over the past year, sharing that my videos helped them see their way out of Zionism, have convinced me that it's possible. Finally, if all else fails, if you are truly in the pit of despair and you see no reason to hope that anything ever is going to get any better, so there's no point in resisting empire, remember when hope is depleted, there's always spite. I have found within myself that spite is perhaps the deepest and most reliable well I can draw from. Empire would like nothing more than for good people of conscience to give up. Elites would desperately like you to shut your mouth and obey. Fuck 'em. Keep being a pain in the ass of your overlords, even though it's hard and there's no guarantee that we win. I could care less how pure your intentions are. I can't know, and I don't care whether you're motivated by guilt or rage or the noblest of ideals. Call for a free Palestine because it's cool. Wear a keffiyeh because you look great in one. Dunk on Zionists because you don't want to be associated with them because they're the biggest dorks and losers on the planet. Say free Palestine because Macklemore and Kelani said so. Shout genocide bad over and over and over again. For clout, for followers, for fame, deep moral conviction, it's all the same to me. Act out of sacred self-interest. Organize against empire because you yourself want to be free. And you recognize your freedom is bound up with the freedom of Palestinians and all people and all life on earth. Find whatever reason you can to keep showing up. You won't be alone. If you have one comrade left, it's me. If you have 0 comrades, I'm dead. But in fact, you have hundreds of millions of comrades. And if we can convert a few 100 million more, maybe, just maybe, just the fool's hope in hell, maybe, we can free Palestine, fuck empire, topple all tyrants, and save life on earth. Thanks very much to Sim Kern for these words, and thank you for listening.